Welcome everybody. This is the afternoon session of our Cove Data Protection M365 Backup and Recovery Bootcamp. This is the inaugural day of this particular bootcamp. Traditionally, we just do a short segment as part of my Backup Level 100 bootcamp to cover M365. But I kind of felt that it deserved its own dedicated bootcamp. So instead of it getting 30 to 40 minutes, it's going to get a 2-hour bootcamp session where we can go into a little bit more depth, and that is due to the fact that we are very close to releasing the Teams backup support in a general availability state. It's been currently in an engineering preview for the last couple months as they've been finishing out phase 2 of development. While that's not the final phase of development around Microsoft Teams or around Microsoft 365, it is a significant step forward, and we'll be making it GA in product so that you guys can take advantage of it. So with no further delays, let me kick this thing off. I will be talking about our Microsoft Teams backup functionality as well as Mail, OneDrive, and SharePoint functionality that is available inside of Cove Data Protection. Some of those features, as they stand right now, are not yet generally available. They are in early adopter or engineering preview type phase, but we are rapidly moving toward the GA phase as well, so I will talk about that. I'll do my best to preface anything that's not currently generally available as being a forward-looking statement while we're talking about that today. Please don't make any licensing or purchasing decisions based on features or functions that have not yet been delivered as part of a generally available product. Those features could change, the timing could change, the feature could be dropped or delayed significantly depending on changes in the market and directions inside of Enable. So once again, please don't make your licensing decisions until it is a GA product, okay? My name is Eric Harless. I'm one of the 7 head nerds here at Enable. My focus is on data protection technologies, so I'm the head backup nerd. I've been with the organization now just over 10 years. I hit my 10-year anniversary in September. That entire time working on Enable's backup product line. My first 6 years here in product management, the last 4 years in this head nerd role, kind of building out a community of like-minded backup gurus and backup nerds that can help support a channel and strengthen a community. My career as a whole, 25 plus years in data protection, business continuity, replication, high availability, those kind of things. Mixture of sales, support, system engineering roles, mainly product management, however, at a lot of different companies that you've maybe grown to love or hate. So I won't do the name drops here, but feel free to ask me about that if we do end up on a one-on-one nerd call or a future health check or some other type of discussion. I'd be more than happy to talk to you about the history when we're not focusing on a bootcamp topic, okay? If you want to reach out to me on social media, you can do that. My Twitter handle is @backup_nerd. If you want to drop me an email, it's eric.harless@n-able.com. You can also reach me on Facebook. You can reach me on Slack. You can find me in Reddit as well as LinkedIn. Also inside of the Enable Me portal, me.n-able.com, and there are product forms inside of there that I can respond back to you as well. But if in doubt, just drop me a quick email. So our agenda today, we're going to do an overview of the M365 solution. I'll take you through the console, and we'll look at some navigation and how we add a domain in. We're going to go through Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, and the current Teams preview, and I'll give you guys some teasers on what's coming out in the GA release here in November, with the target of being first available in December of 2023. And then time allowing, we will do a look at some scripting and some reporting capabilities that I've built some scripting around, utilizing the Cove Data Protection API and a PowerShell wrapper to take advantage of some of the what I might consider some short-sighted areas in the product when it comes to, say, audit reporting or exporting or just month-to-month reconciliation. So rest assured that that is data I'm passing back to the product management team. So hopes are that they'll take my scripts and my automation and interject those into product at some point in the near future. But until then, a nice, quick, simple PowerShell script to grab some additional data that you might want to get or might find you want to get out of the product. Okay. So let's keep moving forward. The overview of M365. For those of you that have not used it or that are new to it, there are some prerequisites. Let me explain the service. We call the M365 backup option our cloud-to-cloud backup option. And I call it cloud-to-cloud in comparison to what we refer to as normal Cove Data Protection for servers and workstations, which we call or refer to as cloud first. When I say cloud first, I mean that we back up from your on-premise systems. We open up a secure tunnel to the enabled cloud, and that's where we send the data. We don't consider the data backed up or fully protected until we have an offsite copy of it. Now, with servers and workstations, you can also enable what they call a local speed vault to build a local redundant dedupe, compressed, and encrypted copy of that data, effectively a backup and a restore cache that can be used as well. Now, it's a bit of a misnomer to think that we write to the cloud first and then we write to that vault secondarily. Technically, I write to both of them simultaneously, and I may end up writing to one faster than the other. And when one finishes, then it will do a background sync of the remaining transferred data up to the other data source after the fact. Slowly behind the scenes as kind of a trickle up or trickle down. With M365, it's a true cloud-to-cloud offering, meaning that we're backing up a data source in the cloud, and that data is being sent to one of the enabled private cloud data centers. So there is no local redundant copy, no speed vault, nothing on-premise with your M365 data. It's just purely a cloud instance of that data that's being protected. What are we protecting? Well, we're protecting or providing backup and recovery services for Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. And the goal here is to handle that data protection multiple times per day so that you've got multiple points in times you can use for recovery in the event that there's a data loss, corruption, deletion, ransomware, your M365 portal's been hacked, those kind of things. Microsoft has for long said that the M365 platform is for availability, and while I do have recycle bins and deleted bins that you can pull data back out of, it's not really designed for backup. It's got versioning. You can pull back an earlier version of a file, things of that nature, but it's not truly a backup. Imagine if your local machine were compromised, were ransomed, then all of those files sitting out in OneDrive that's synced are also encrypted ransomed files as well. Yes, you might be able to go and grab a prior version of each of those guys individually, but that's not the type of restore that I would want to manipulate. I'd want to be able to lay down the latest version of those files from a known good point with just a few clicks. Cove relies on tenant access to Microsoft 365 as an application. So we're going to authorize, or you're going to authorize, the Cove backup application to be able to talk to your M365 tenant. And that tenant could include multiple domains. You've got the ability then to select which mailboxes or accounts are required for backup, which services you want to back up. Within reason, there are some data sources where we pick the users based on the content that you've chosen, the ones that are licensed to it or the ones that are the Teams owners, for example. All the backup data is encrypted locally at the time of the backup by the backup source, transferred across a secure TLS 1.2 or 1.3 tunnel, and remains encrypted in the enabled cloud. To enable this functionality, no pun intended, you do need a super user account in the Cove Management Console. It needs to have security officer rights if you're going to be initiating restore operations, and it does also need to be a Microsoft 365 Global Administrator, you need to have a Microsoft Global Administrator account in order to approve or authorize that application, that account, to do that initial configuration and backup and to facilitate any type of restores. Okay, I'll go into more of those requirements through each of the data sources, as well as limitations as we go through the session today, okay? And once again, questions-wise, I see a couple have come through here. I'll try to answer most of these guys in context of the session. If it's something that's outside of what I'm going to be talking about, I may just stop and grab it right then, answer it in private during the break at the top of the hour, or drop you a quick email or a chat based on that one, depending on, once again, what it is, whether it's something you want me to open up to the audience, or whether it's considered a private question. Something you don't want me to share with the audience, by all means, just specify private in the question, and I will direct it back to you directly and send it to the audience as well. Let's bring up the M365 environment and show that off just a little bit. So here we are in my Cove dashboard. This is for our SE demo account. As you can see, I've got what now? 79 devices between servers and workstations. 64 servers, 13 workstations, 2 documents devices. I've got 5 M365 domains here. I'm going to go ahead and filter on those guys. And we can see here now I've got a handful of domains, some of which look to be relatively recent. From an additions perspective, I've got others that have been running for more than 28 days. You can see the active data sources, Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, and the Teams preview. Current selected size, current used storage. So we can see the type of dedupe, compression, and encryption ratios that we're seeing. Sorry, the type of deduplication ratios we're seeing after compression, encryption, and deduplication. Columns in the dashboard are customizable. So as you scroll over to the right here, you'll notice that some of these are, product and profile and speed vault status. Some of these are not relevant if I'm in a normal all devices view for M365. To make your life a little bit easier, we have a pre-canned dashboard view for M365. Just go to the backup dashboard section right here and pick M365. And that's going to give you something that's a little bit easier to work with. And I'm going to scroll my windows a little bit larger here to get my full view of my 28 days. Or maybe I just need to cut my zoom rate down a little bit. Let's see, I'm at 100%. I'll take us down to 90%. That'll give me a little bit more real estate to play with. So in addition to the aggregate or the roll-up color bar showing me my success over the last 28 days, I also have individual color bars for each of those individual data sources. So here's my M365 backup color bar. Here's my M365 Exchange, OneDrive. I've got a SharePoint one over here. I've got the number of Exchange protected user mailboxes, the Exchange protected shared mailboxes, a number of OneDrive protected mailboxes, the number of SharePoint protected user mailboxes, and SharePoint protected sites. So there are 3 licensed SharePoint users that exist in this particular domain, so I'm basing billing for SharePoint off of that, even though there are 34 unique protected sites. Here I can see that I've got 3 users as well with 13 sites. Here I've got 1 user and 9 sites. It's not the number of sites or even the size of the sites that impact billing for M365. It's the number of unique users. So the number of unique SharePoint protected users, OneDrive protected users, and regular protected Exchange mailbox users, not shared mailboxes. Those are free. So the unique number between these 3 columns is what we use to calculate billing, and that would be what we're getting over here in this column, Microsoft 365 protected regular accounts. So non-free or non-shared mailbox accounts, okay? So your monthly billing would be based on this number of unique users. There are some cleanup routines that we can talk about if anybody's interested. Proper pruning or expiration of deleted accounts, or if you're converting your accounts from production mailboxes to shared mailboxes instead of deleting users. That's great. You can retain those M365 mail backups for no additional charge if you're using that mailbox now as a shared mailbox, but you do need to properly remove the license and properly purge out the historic OneDrive backup sessions so that they don't keep that in a billable state. Same thing for deleted mailboxes. You can keep those inside of Cove as long as you want, but if it was a licensed billable mailbox before you deleted it, it's still a billable deleted mailbox after, and that's got a monthly mailbox charge on it. You could obviously not delete it and turn it into a shared mailbox and then keep it. Or you could turn around and take those deleted mailboxes, restore them out to another user, to a manager, to the employee that replaced that user, things of that nature, so that that data is accessible to somebody else, but you're not paying for those monthly recurring license fees. If anybody wants any more information on that type of thing, I do have a script that I'll show you at the tail end of the session today, which can help you better consolidate, no, what's the word I'm looking for here? Better reconcile your usage and your license consumption against your Cove billing invoices. Okay. Is cost-based? Question: is cost-based on a per user or on a user and services being backed up? It's based on per unique user. So let's see that I have. Let's assume that I have just 3 Exchange users for this first account here. So I've got 3 Exchange protected users. I've got 3 OneDrive protected users. Assuming those are the same 3 users, and I didn't turn backup for Mail on for 3, and then to turn on backup for OneDrive on 3 different ones, these are the same, or very likely the same 3 unique users. So my licensing is based on 3 unique users across the platform. I could turn off OneDrive, I could turn off SharePoint, I could turn off Teams. I've still got 3 mailbox users that are unique, so it'd still be billable for 3 users. As soon as that user has one service turned on for their user account, you might as well turn on the other 4 or the other 3 because there's no additional charges at that point. And we felt that was actually a fairly reasonable way to go about doing this, although we do get the occasional complaint on our SharePoint licensing models because it's tied to the number of users that have a SharePoint accessible license, not necessarily just content creators inside of SharePoint. So for most organizations, not a big deal, but if you've got a lot of short-time, temporary workers, you've got an educational system with a school, that has a bunch of students that are in the M365 environment as well. Turning on SharePoint protection for those kind of environments could have some additional cost just based on the number of users that might have SharePoint access, but you don't really want to back up their mailboxes or their Teams or their OneDrive data at all. So we are working on some additional licensing models restructuring for that functionality. Obviously, this is a forward-looking statement, but probably a Q1 timeframe, I would think, before we'll see anything on that one in production. Okay, excellent question. Let's see. The other thing I didn't show here, with this data, obviously you can take these columns, you can shrink and size them the way you like, so you can get more on the screen. Down to the point that you can't even read the title, you just have to mouse over it to see the details. This predefined M365 report does not currently have Teams information inside of it. So what we can do is we can come over here to columns, and we're going to start searching for Teams to get all of my different Microsoft Teams columns. So I'm going to turn my color bar on, my last successful, my number of changed files, my number of errors, number of files in selection, processed, channels, messages, size, protected user mailboxes, retention, and actually I don't need that one, selected size. Let's see, how much data did we send? What was my run duration? And current team status, last completed. Don't need the restore variations of these. As you notice, I'm skipping the restore variations. I don't really care at the moment when something was restored inside of these data sources. I just want to look at timestamps and other metrics around it. So there's 40 different Teams metrics here. That's about 20 backup metrics and around 20 restore metrics. Not exactly. I think it's actually 22 and 18 or something along those lines. But anyway, That aside, I'm going to go ahead and save that. And then I can come up here in the upper right corner, and I can actually save my view, and we'll do save view as M365 backups hyphen with Teams. Now that that's in here, we'll actually update the global view here shortly as well. Have to restructure some of these columns to get everything that we want in here, especially for some email views and things like that, but that is doable. Now that I have those extra columns in here, we can see those Teams backups. So we can see the color bar here over the last few days, the last week. As it mentioned at the top of the screen there a little earlier, we are in the process of updating databases, getting ready for our migration over to the GA release of Teams. Session duration, completed, the timestamps, number of teams protected, number of user mailboxes that are protected here. So how many users are tied to this particular Teams site or Teams channel. Here we've got 2 users or 3 users, but they've got effectively 12 unique teams under the covers. Here 2 and 6, 2 and 8, 1 and 1. It's going to be this unique number here that could have an impact to your billing. Okay. With this data, you can easily come in here and export this out and generate reports for a specific month, either as of right now, today, the current day in the current month, or if I grab a prior month, it'll grab me the last day of the month usage, so that you can see that based on the columns that I've got displayed on the screen, or I can grab a maximum value report, which will dump out my high watermark billing, which is the way we license. It's looking at the highest user counts per data source, or unique user counts per data source per month as it's going through the sessions. So if you were to add users at the beginning of the month and then remove them in the middle and then add new users at the end, you would see the impact of those, all of those unique added users during the course of the month. There are other export methodologies and report methodologies that you can work with also here. If you go over here to the left-hand navigation, you can do scheduled reports. Scheduled reports are able to set up a view, that one we just saved, for example, it's going to send out to you on certain days of the week at a predefined time to either internal and or external recipients. So we can come in here and add a new schedule, drop a user into the internal and or the external lists here, pick the view, and I created a M365 backups with Teams, and it's going to send that view, that dashboard list to me, at the frequency I choose here. One limitation is that it's going to give you the first 10 columns, so 10 columns wide for that report. So anything that you don't want in that report, you probably want to pull out. If you want to get Teams information in there or that color bar, you're going to want to pull out something else so that you can get that color bar in. You might think about building out 2 Teams reports, one for Mail and OneDrive, one for SharePoint and Teams, and grab those reports separately. You can even set those up to only show failures or errors with those systems, separate reports for successes versus failures. That, once again, it's because you get 10 wide and 200 domains deep. If you've got more than 200 domains or you want to get more than 10 columns worth of information, using some of my API calls that export might be more opportune for you than this emailed report. Although there are some requests out there right now with product management on the reporting side to further extend these emailed reports to include exports as attachments or to do more than, say, 10 columns or 200 devices deep. Okay. If that's something that would be interesting for you guys, and you want to chime in on that one or get some visibility into some of those engineering previews around notifications, just type the word notification into the question section, and I can definitely get you into those previews with Volha on the product management team. Okay. Let's see. We are right at the 1:30 mark, so we are doing pretty good on time. Let me discard these changes. And let's look at adding a domain into this environment. So we'll discard this. To add a new domain, we're going to come in here, hit Add Device, choose the M365 option here in my dashboard. For any of you guys that are utilizing M365 backup inside of InCentral, that option is available as well. That Add button is visible to you. You'll just use that, and then you'll be presented with the same or very similar wizard. So I'm going to add this M365 domain to one of my end customers here. So I'm going to go with Latin America Experts. The domain name, this can be the actual physical domain name, or you can do a human readable name here. So in this case, I'm just going to say my test domain, because I am just doing a lab domain here, and it's not going to, I'm not going to create this as a permanent entity. Just my test domain for boot camps. How about that? Notice that there are some character limitations, so I'm going to just remove all spaces and hit next. It wants me to connect now with that domain admin that I have, that global domain admin for M365. So I'm going to hit my connect button. It is going to give me the option to log in with that domain administrator, or since I am already logged in with it, I can actually choose it right here. The next thing it's going to prompt me for is authorization of the application. So it's going to provide rights to this application to perform these functions inside of the M365 environment. The fact that we're running as an application means that you can later change users, assign new global admins, demote global admins, turn on multi-factor authentication, those kind of things, and it will not break the ongoing backups behind the scenes. You do need this global admin access to do the backups and to come in and do those restores, as well as having security officer rights inside of the Cove platform. So just being an admin inside of M365 is not enough. Just being a super user and a security officer inside of Cove is not enough. You need both pieces to facilitate the initial setup and to facilitate recoveries. Just purely a security focus there. Okay. So we're going to accept this, but before I do that, I want to point out something at the bottom here. If for some reason you decided you wanted to dump Cove, and you haven't been in a trial, but you no longer have access to the Cove platform, but you forgot to disable M365 backups, you can go to the myapps.microsoft.com location. You can log into your M365 portal. You can find the apps that are authorized for protecting and interacting with M365, and you can disconnect or decline or revoke that permission inside of M365, which will stop that ongoing backup, even if you don't have access to the Cove platform. Okay. Now, it's not going to purge or delete that historic backups out of the system, but it will stop the ongoing backups. Nobody from an enable perspective will have access or rights to restore those. And then if it were an expired trial, then that account would get cleaned up as part of the trial expiration reclamation processes behind the scenes. So we're going to go ahead and accept here to authorize this application and proceed. Now, one thing I should tell you is I did reuse my credentials that are already been provisioned for another M365 domain within inside of this environment. So I'm going to get a failure. And you can see here this domain is already protected by backup. If you'd like to modify it, please view cloud properties. Click new, connect new domain if you'd like to try another domain for this customer. It's going to prevent you from creating the same domain duplicate multiple times, or if it was already in a trial, or if it was already being protected by another MSP using Cove. You'll get an error here saying, hey, this is already protected, or it's had problems authorizing it with the Cove application. In cases like that, you may need to come back and talk to the support team to figure out, okay, well, where is this other tenant? Is it in a trial? Is it inside of my Central? Is another MSP protecting this environment? Did another MSP trial it? And then it expired but hasn't been purged out of the system yet, hasn't reached its purge deadline, things like that. Just the goal there not to have multiple applications running simultaneously on the environment if they're not required. Let's see. Let's go into that same domain now. It's kind of the Julia Child effect here. I've built the lasagna, I've layered it, I've now slid it into the oven so it can bake, and then I'm going to flip over the other oven door here and pull out that baked lasagna or that baked casserole so we can carve into it and see the steam and catch the smell. So inside of my environment here, I'm working with this Cove Head Nerd domain. It's the same one I used the credentials for just a moment ago. So we're going to take this one and actually bring it up. And we're going to talk about some of the auditing, reporting overview sections that exist inside of the platform before we drill down into Exchange, SharePoint, Teams, and OneDrive, okay? So the Overview tab. Overview tab is going to give me a stacked list of data sources, very, very similar to the horizontal list of data sources I saw in the Cove console. Here we can see the individual data sources that are protected, when they were added from a backup and recovery perspective, the most recent backup status and time frame, were there any errors, what's the current selected size, the number of protected users. This is not necessarily the number of billable users. You're going to see protected users up here. You'll see the number of unique protected users here broken out. So in this case, yeah, there are 22 unique users, and we are managing to protect them all with Exchange, protect all of them with OneDrive. Here we can see the number of sites or teams channels that are being protected. So here we've got 13 sites and 8 teams. Those are licensed based on 3 users or 2 users respectively here. The backup frequency, this is a fixed value currently. We are looking at some options to allow you to change that one if you wanted to do it less frequently. You can do it more frequently now by coming in and manually kicking off backup operations for a given data source. If you know you need a backup right now, it could also be done via API if you like. But this is the predefined set and cannot be reduced right now and can't be changed. We're also looking at the retention, 7 years retention. That is the factory retention set for our M365 offering. That also cannot be adjusted at a present time. I've got requests here recently for 1 year and 1 year only. I've had requests for up to 10 years, and then kind of every place in between. It is a roadmap item, hashtag forward-looking statement, something we are considering for the near future. I'm sorry, for the future. I won't say near future because it's probably more than 6 months out before we'll see that type of additional enhancement here. Color bar for the last 28 days. That's an aggregate, or sorry, no, that's an individual color bar for each of the individual data sources here. You'll also notice over here there's 3 dots, and this is important if you need to come in and do cleanup. For example, let's say you came in and realized, oh, well, wait a minute, I'm being billed for 100 protected users for my SharePoint environment because I've got 100 protected users, and I've got 100 users that have access rights to SharePoint, but I only really want to back up 22 unique users from a Mail and a OneDrive perspective. We're going to dump SharePoint. Well, if we're going to do that, I can come over right here and delete SharePoint out. Purge my SharePoint history so I'm not being hit with those ongoing recurring SharePoint bills. You'll also need to come in and deselect SharePoint so that it doesn't continue or start to do a new backup going forward, okay? Same thing for any of these other data sources here. If you wanted to come in and purge the Exchange backup for some reason, you could do that. You have to be a security officer. You have to have those global administrator credentials in order to get that type of access, okay? I want to edit Exchange. This is going to let me come in and start to reconfigure the Exchange environment. I want to kick off a backup right now of Exchange or the restore of Exchange. I can do that right here from these drop downs. I can also do it up here, come up here, back up all data sources now or individual data sources, or I could trigger restores for individual data sources from the drop down at the very top. My 3 dots allow me to delete the domain. I want to purge the domain completely here from inside of it. Okay. The history tab. History tab is useful. You can see the sessions. You can filter those sessions based on successes, failures, errors, user counts. You can see growth over time here. We're looking at just the last 28 days, but I can come in here and adjust my date range, take my start time out, use any of the predefines, but also take my start time out and go back to an earlier month. So I'm going to go back to January as far as I can. And say January 1st. So I'm looking at January 1st to October the 26th. I'll use that. Now I've got, 1,800, almost 1,900 entries, 19 pages of audits. Now I want to look at just restore operations. So I filtered on that. I want to look at just Teams operations that were Teams restores. So I've got 2 restores, one yesterday, one today for this. Let's look at just failures. When was my last failure or completed with errors? Don't have any failures or completed with errors in that time frame, so that's wonderful. So let's go ahead and clear out these filters. There is a search option. No, I apologize. There's not a search option on this one. I can compact these a little bit if you want to get them a lot of them on the screen so you can see them. I do apologize. There is not currently a export option for the history in the GUI. However, I do have PowerShell scripts that utilize our API that can dump these out to a CSV or an Excel file for you. You just tell it how far back you want, and it'll pull that data for you very easily. I'll show those off in the final or in the second hour. Audit. So audit and history very tightly aligned. So you can see I've got my same date range here. Let's take this guy and make him a little bit earlier in the year. Use that. So now I've got, what, 57 audit entries. So this is when I've made changes to the configuration. So back in April, the 26th is when I added the tenant. Here I can see I did kicked off some manual backups of OneDrive. Here I updated my settings to include Exchange and the other data sources. Backup now for Exchange, OneDrive, Teams, SharePoint, more OneDrive backups. Just a few minutes apart here, probably trying to get the backup happening shortly after I added some data into the environment. Building out the lab, update my settings, backup now, update settings, backup now. And you can see exactly which users, and I've got 2 different user accounts here you can see, that were interacting or working with this particular domain. You can filter on, when was the domain added, or when was a service added, when backup now operations were kicked off, when backup now operations for Exchange were kicked off. So there's quite a few ways to filter and sort on that one. You can also search. And then, of course, if we were to do something like a restore here, we can see I've got a restore. If I mouse over my audit, then I can actually copy my audit detail to the clipboard. And the audit is in a JSON format. That's the function that the API pulls out as well. But utilizing that, we can decipher that or help you decipher that a little bit to say, okay, what users did I restore? Where did I restore them to? What were the settings? Right now, we have a entity ID and a node ID that tie to things like session and selections, and then, of course, the user mailbox that are here. This is obscured a little bit by keeping the GUIDs in place so that we don't break and or violate things like GDPR or present email addresses in an environment where we should not from an audit perspective. Okay, so that's it for the high-level overview, audit history, things like that. We're going to move next into things like the Exchange OneDrive, the SharePoint, the Teams tab. We'll also look at backup protected users, and then while we're triggering some actual real backups and some restores, we'll go into the backup and restore tab and look at that operation as well, okay? I've got about 15 minutes before the top of the hour. Right around the top of the hour, we'll take a 5-minute break. So if there are any questions, once again, feel free to drop them in before the break, and I'll try to take some time either as I see them come through or at the break to answer the ones that have not yet chimed in on, okay? Let's see. I want to get back to Exchange. Exchange backup for M365. There's a handful of benefits. I've already touched on a few of these. The 7-year retention, the running up to 6 sessions a day, so that's every 4 hours. We're going to back up the full content of the mailbox, and then you can restore your contacts, your calendars, individual folders and or mail inside of your mailboxes. There are some limitations, however, certain things that we don't protect, certain things that you can't restore. So I'll talk about those here on the next slide. We do allow you to restore specific data, specific dates and sessions. I apologize, that's a typo there. And you can restore that data to 3 different target locations. Either an auto-generated location that's got a kind of a date stamp on it. You can restore it back to the original location, so you're putting your calendar data back into the original calendar, not a sub-calendar or a subfolder. Or you're putting your contacts into the original contacts location, not a sub-contacts location. Or the mail. You're putting all the mail items into this location as opposed to back in their original locations. And you get options to choose to overwrite mail if newer and things like that. But this is a ways that you can restore the mail without creating duplicates inside of your account. Or you can restore to a new location. And restoring to a new location, you pick the folder and we'll lay the data down inside of that environment. One thing to note when you're doing an auto-generated location or a new location, um, um, it's going to restore all the items that you select. When you pick the original location, you've got options to not overwrite things that exist already. So if you're looking to just pull back the 3 or 4 deleted accidental mailbox messages, original location is probably the best. If you don't really know what you deleted and you just want to pull everything back so you can look through it, pushing that into a auto-generated location makes a lot more sense so that you can pick the ones you want, drag them where you need them, and then throw away that content. From a backup perspective, it's not really going to blow up our backup by restoring it because it was already in the backup. We're just going to see it again and dedupe and compress it, put a pointer in the database saying, hey, this file is here now, or this message is here now. One thing to note, and this is consistent across all of the data sources, all of the data processing and all the storage is kept regional. So if you are a US-based customer, we're going to be utilizing a US-based M365 environment, we're going to align the backup and the processing of that data and keep it in the US inside of enable managed data centers. If you are in Canada, we'll stay in Canada. If you're in the UK, we'll stay in the UK. If you're in the European Union, we'll stay within the EU, but I can't guarantee individual countries inside of the EU, Australia inside of Australia, and so on. New Zealand, you'll probably end up in an Australia region or an APAC region aligned with M365 Microsoft locations in Asia-Pac. Okay. I do apologize. I've got a half a page of benefits here, plus the things I've told you, what I'm going to show you. I've got a full page of limitations and or exclusions, and these are very, very important. Now, you can take screenshots of these, or you can just pull up the Cove documentation inside a product, go up to the upper right-hand corner, and you'll see some links to the user manuals and documentation. All of these limitations and benefits are in the docs. But I want to spell them out here because they're overlooked a lot, and I'll get questions. Well, why don't you back up this? Why don't you back up that? In a lot of those cases, it's because Microsoft doesn't actually have an API to capture that data. So we've had to go out and build some of our own functions in order to do that. That's one of the reasons that Teams has taken us as long as it has to roll out. We've had to build some of that functionality and capabilities ourselves. There are some changes coming from a Microsoft perspective that might help us in that arena, but still required to do a little bit more due diligence, some more analysis on that one. But Microsoft is actively pitching chargeable APIs to backup vendors now, so that we can get access to additional data, store data in their cloud, and work with it in a more opportune way, much like the way they introduced VSS so that you could do backups of Windows servers and workstations and get that data reliably, not while it was in use. Okay. As we learn more about what we're going to be doing there, we will make that our intentions known to our partners, get you up into early adopter previews, bring you into usability studies, things like that, to ask you questions about what do you think about this feature or that feature. Obviously, if we start taking advantage of Microsoft chargeable APIs versus their current free APIs, then there's a certain level of being able to protect additional data, getting some of the data we can't grab through these current methodologies. There's also expectation, at least on my part, that Microsoft's going to want to charge us more for those type of services. So I would see probably some kind of hybrid offering where you've got free services or native services and then premium services. That might be the way to look at it. And then depending on the retention or frequency or redundancy levels or in your backups, you may end up buying into a tier A, a tier B, a tier C level of M365 backup protection. Obviously, those are all forward-looking type statements. The entire industry that does M365 backup has been presented with these new APIs, this new capability. They're all have signed on to look at it and learn more from Microsoft as they make data available to us. But this is just in the very, very early stages of that one, just trying to feel it out at the moment. Obviously, forward-looking statements. Please don't make your licensing and your purchasing decisions for us or for anybody, for that matter, on things that have not yet made generally available, because they can always change, right? Limitations as they exist today inside of M365 Exchange Backup. We don't currently support backup or restore of groups or Outlook notes. While I can restore your meetings in your calendar, I can only restore the ones that you have accepted. or that have been accepted by the recipient. So if you've got a handful of tentatives sitting in your mailbox that you've not actually clicked on and accepted those meetings yet, when I go to do recovery of your mailbox, you're going to get back the ones you've accepted in your calendar, but you're not going to have those tentative ones in your calendar. Yes, I can restore your mailbox and bring back those pending messages in your inbox for the calendar invites. You can go in and find them and accept them and get them added back into your calendar. But those tentative items are not going to automatically show back up in your calendar just from a calendar-based restore. Only user accounts with security officer permissions can restore from a deleted or unlicensed mailbox. And only those same users can delete your backup history for an individual user or an account. And that's helpful there in helping to ensure that somebody doesn't restore something that they aren't supposed to, or that they don't purge something that they're not supposed to. You can grant security officer rights to other user level accounts, so it doesn't always have to be a super user. But there are some roles and functions, as I mentioned earlier as well, that require super user and security officer to interact. We don't support hybrid Microsoft 365 installations. That's where you've got on-premise mailboxes as well as cloud-based hosted mailboxes. We might see those mailboxes, but when we go to try to back those up, we're going to get an error saying it's not API enabled. And the only real way to get around that is going to be to deselect those local on-premise mailboxes from the M365 backup. And you can select those individually in the UI, and it should be able to proceed fine with the remaining cloud-based items. We don't currently support backup and or restore of Microsoft public folders. Public folders are a legacy carryover from the on-premise Exchange days. Now, while Microsoft was planning to originally deprecate that functionality and try to force people over into SharePoint and to OneDrive and things of that nature, they did ultimately port it into M365, but they have not yet, to my knowledge at least, built a API call or a connector that can be used in order to back up those public folders, that public folder data. Yes, there are some competitors out there. This is a very, very important distinction. There are some competitors out there with an M365 solution that I guarantee can back up public folders. Can they get all the public folder information? I have absolutely no idea. They've written their own methodologies in order to capture and protect that data outside of Microsoft APIs. So changes that Microsoft may make, updates that they may make, or deprecations they may make could have an impact to that. So while you're building your plans for adopting an M365 solution, what you're really going to want to do is figure out your data sources that you want to protect or are required to protect, and then inside of each of those data sources, what are the subcomponents that you need to be able to protect, and then you want to go through and start to tick those off based on your various competitors, and find and standardize on the one that's going to fit your needs the best. And you may have to make some exceptions. You may find a case where you actually need multiple vendors to do some of these things, just because it's not all available everywhere. Some of these vendors that have the APIs have been able to come across and do some very standardized things. The ones that are having to build their own components, it's a bit of the Wild West, and it's based on customer demand and prioritization as to what they build out next. And that is one of the advantages I see or foresee or hope to see in Microsoft paid APIs being available at some point in the near future. I'm hoping to let us get a lot of these edge cases that we just cannot get today because of lack of API or lack of a clear method to capture and or restore the data. We don't currently support backup and restore of tasks inside of Exchange. Also, another very, very important one here, at least for some users, is I do not protect the online archive. So archive mailboxes or native archive folders are not captured as part of the backup operation. If you're going to be utilizing the online archive inside of M365 and you plan on turning it on after you've deployed Cove, that's fine. I've backed up your mailbox. That includes all the mail that you're going to end up pulling out into the archive. So I back it up as it runs through the mailbox, but I don't actually back up the archive, online archive folders themselves. If you've already got data in the online archive, then that can be a bit more of a challenge because you'd have to end up pulling the data out of the archive back into your proper mailbox, capture the data with Cove, and then re-trigger the archive process to pull the data out of the mailbox back into the archive environment. And that could require some additional temporary licensing to increase your sizes, your capacities, things like that. Could temporarily. There are some scripting and some API calls out there available, though, that can let you work and interact with the online archive to pull data back into the mailbox, and then you can trigger those archives in bulk again. So there are some methodologies around it, but suffice it to say that the Cove Data Protection solution for M365 is really not an archiving solution, it's a backup solution. And that'll be present as we talk about some of the other items here, clear as we talk about some of the other items as well. Most M365 backup solutions out there are just that, they're backup solutions, they're not archive solutions. If you need a journal mailbox, if you need restores for compliance, if you need legal hold, purchase the M365 tools that are designed for those kind of functionalities. For example, we've got a tool called MailAssure available from Enable, which does spam filtering, secure encryption, secure encrypted email sending, some staging in case your M365 server is down. You can read emails and send mail from here. And it also has the ability to do mailbox archiving or journaling, so that all messages coming in go through the journal and it can be retained as part of an archive. So the two solutions together work very nicely, but just think about that when choosing platforms. Do you need backup? Do you need archive? Do you need compliance? And then, of course, look at some of the other limitations that exist here. Do those either allow you to tick the box or rule you out based on your customer's needs? Let's see. You cannot back up from an unlicensed mailbox. So if the mailbox no longer has a license, loses its license, or the license was removed, or the mailbox was removed before the backup, mailbox license was removed before the backup was started, we're either not going to see it, we're going to get a failure on it, can't connect to it, things like that. Does need to be a licensed mailbox for me to protect it. Now, it could be a shared mailbox, which is a free license from Microsoft. But if you just remove the license from it, I'm going to lose access to be able to back it up and access to be able to restore to it until a new license is assigned back to that mailbox. If you removed it in the middle of a backup operation while it was in progress, it's going to start to fail, and you'll get an error in the environment on that session. And in the future sessions, we're just going to skip or not see that mailbox and no longer try to protect it. It doesn't mean that you don't have historical data for it, but you can't restore it back to the original mailbox, and because the mailbox is not deleted, I can't restore it to an alternate. So you would have to at least temporarily apply a license to it in order to get the data back into that mailbox if you needed it. Finally, if the mailbox is removed before the backup is started, well, then we're just not going to see it. So it won't be visible as part of as a mailbox that could be selected for protection. Finally, and this is going to carry over to all of the other data sources, we don't currently support delegated Microsoft 365 tenants. So we do require that you grant permissions being logged in as an administrator of the original tenant. So you need to log into the tenant, not into a delegated environment. Hopefully something will fix in the near future, although I do not have, or I guess something will fix and or develop in the near future. I don't know that it's a defect, but something will develop in the near future, but I don't have a target ETA for it at the moment. So let's get into my M365 environment, and we're going to kick off some backups, some restores, some configuration here. So the Exchange and OneDrive tab is combined, and that's because you see the user mailboxes that are here. You can see or select to backup Exchange or OneDrive all here on the same screen. You can look and see the backup status for those data sources, when they last were protected, current OneDrive sizes and things like that. And we felt this was easier than having you have to select these users twice, once on a OneDrive panel and once on an Exchange panel. I can come in here with a brand new environment, which would look something like this. It's going to give me my list of enumerated users, and I can come down here and select the individual users that I want to work with. I can filter and sort these up to 100 at a time. But if you've got something like 4,000 users in a large environment, then you're probably going to want to come in here and do something like this and just select all of the users. You may also want to come in and do some searching and some filtering. I want to filter on a domain or a subdomain or something along those lines, and then make your selections in order to tick and check those boxes. If you want to get more granular and you want to say, I want to get all my Exchange, but I only want to get OneDrive for select users, you can go that route as well. You'll notice here how we get check and check gives me a full check versus check and no check gives me a partial here from a selection perspective, and work your way through this. Each time I hit save, it's going to update that user list in the product, and I can move into different pages of users and things like that. As you add new users into the M365 domain, or as your customers add new users into M365, they may not come to you to do it. I know some of the MSP partners that utilize Enable are also managing the M365 domains, adding users, securing users, things of that nature. But that's not always the case. So there could be users that get added in and users that are deleted and are removed without your knowledge. And what you're going to see are cases like this, where Lydia, that mailbox has been deleted. So it's been removed from the M365 domain. Now we've got historic backups of it, and it looks like it's still licensed in the system, but the user has been deleted. Here we got another deleted one. We can look at things like regular mailboxes versus shared mailboxes here. So I come in here and I want to filter, just show me the shared mailboxes. So I don't have any shared mailboxes currently. Show me regular mailboxes. Here's my list. I can make my selections based on this option. I can look at licenses. So show me any unlicensed M365 mailboxes. I won't be able to select them, but you can identify them so you can go and work on getting licenses allocated to those, or removing licenses from ones that shouldn't have them and putting them in the proper places. Once again, a reason to do a monthly license inventory and reconciliation to ensure things are licensed the way they should be. Protected users versus unprotected. So a lot of different filter options here. You can see based on this, right now I've got 22 mail selected, and I've got 4 OneDrive users selected. And the 3 dots that are over here on the far right, these are going to be present if you have sufficient credentials. The ability to delete all backup history, that would be Exchange and OneDrive for this particular user. I'm going to purge this user. I'm going to delete this user out of the system. I want to make sure that there's no residual for this user whatsoever because they've been deleted now for 6 months and I don't need this data anymore. I can pull it out of here so it no longer becomes billable or chargeable from an Enable perspective. And you can choose individual data sources or just delete all backup history for Exchange and OneDrive for that particular mailbox user. So that's an option there. At a granular level, I could purge the entire domain if I like, but that was an earlier setting that I showed you. While I'm in here, after I've made these user selections, you can wait for the next scheduled backup, or you can just come up here, hit the backup Exchange Now button, and it's going to kick off the backup for this current selection list. And yes, I know this is not a full selection list. That's fine. I'll go ahead and deselect all of it, reselect it all back again, and I don't think I ever hit save. I don't recall that one, so I guess I didn't. There we go, save, and I will come back in here and I'll kick off another backup now as well for all of my data sources. The filtering, this can be important. I'm going to show you some API calls and some PowerShell scripts that I have that can give you this data, for all 4,000 users across 400 domains in a single CSV file or Excel spreadsheet, so that you're not going page by page to look at this, but coming in and looking at deleteds, coming in looking at shared, coming in looking at billable users that way, and seeing that you've got shared mailboxes that are still being charged for, deleted mailboxes that are being charged for. That's your very first places you're going to look in order to do reconciliation. Somebody's removed the mailbox, but we are continuing to retain the old backup history. Somebody converted a mailbox to shared, but they never purged the OneDrive history, so therefore it looks like a regular historic mailbox to us, those kind of scenarios. Another thing to note in here is this option in the upper right corner, add new users to backup. So in a scenario here where I've come in and I've selected all my users today, and these settings are turned off, what that means is that if I were to add 10 new users, those users are going to show up in here, but I have to come into the console and tick the box on those users to add them into my selection. Every new user you have to come in and manually add them in to get them backed up. If I turn this on, every new user that's added is going to get automatically included into the system. Now, it is smart, though. So if you were to come in here and turn off Alex and Alexei from a backup perspective and hit save, even though I have add new users to backup turned on, these users were already here, and I've purposely deselected them. I can purge and delete the information out of it, and it's not going to automatically add them back in again unless you were to remove this user and recreate the user inside of M365. Okay? Just checking my questions here. Looks like we're doing pretty good. So let's come in here and purge something. So I'm going to purge Miriam here. So we're going to come down here, select Miriam, and we'll go over here and delete delete all backup history. Delete. Okay, so deleting all backup history for Miriam. It will start in a few minutes and could take some time. Okay, so we've deleted Miriam out of the system. Let's see about restoring Miriam. We're going to come up here, hit restore. Let's restore Exchange. Now, I need to connect as an administrator, so it's going to prompt me for those credentials again. It will have me revalidate the permissions or review the permissions and accept that as well. So here's my credential. This is what rights are needed in order to perform these actions. We're going to accept it. Once again, you can always reject it down here later, or if you don't trust this, you can actually report us here in this process. This is Microsoft Dialog, not ours. So we are now connected. Let's see. And I'm hoping I can actually restore Miriam because I just deleted her. She may not be available for me to restore just yet until that operation completes. I'll be darned. I'll have to coordinate that process a little bit better on my timing. Okay, let's work on restoring something else then. Let's go with my mailbox, just because I know I've got mail and calendar items and other items in here that I can work with. So first thing is what session date and session time do I want to restore from? So if I know that I deleted something, last week, or at least I knew the mailbox was in my mailbox last week, I can come back to the 20th to start looking around there. I could choose a session time. Let's grab the last one of the day. I'm sure it was there, so it's probably going to be there at the end of the day. So we'll grab that one. And I could choose to restore, the entire mailbox, full mailbox. Now, there's a warning here. Microsoft may resend calendar event notifications when you restore a full mailbox. If you wish to prevent this, deselect the calendar items from the restore, and there's a link to the documentation here. Yeah, it could resend invites as it's setting this environment back up. So I could restore all of this back, but maybe I don't want to quite go that far. Let's drill in a little bit and see what else I can do. So let's go into the archive. Let's go into calendar here. Let me go back and make these selections a little bit easier. So here at the top level, I'm looking. I've got subject, start, end, status, organizer for some of my calendar events. Let's see if there's anything in my archive. Nothing in my archive right now. Let's look at contacts. Do I not have any contacts in here? This is a lab environment that it pre-generates for me, so I don't send and restore a lot of send and receive email through here. But contact items there. Maybe I need to go add one and we'll drop it in. Let's see, conversation history, deleted items. Did I go back too far or not go back far enough? I am hitting a blank here on some of these guys. I've got my inbox, and maybe that's all I'm actually populating right now. Give me 1 second here. Let me double check something else. I deleted some stuff earlier today as well. Conversation history. Deleted items, drafts. Nothing in drafts. Let's show all. Junk out. Deleted items. Sent items. So there's some sent items that are there. You know what? Let's just go this route. Let's do this. Let's do a full restore of it. So what are we restoring? Full mailbox. I can restore this now into two locations, an auto-generated location, so it'll create these folders with my username and restored and a date timestamp, so that we can see where they're at, and those are going to show up inside of the calendars, inside of mail, and inside of contacts. Or I could put it back into the original location, which would just overwrite the existing environment, replacing anything that was deleted. I'm going to use the auto-generated folder just so that we can see the tree structure and it put all of the data back in. So we're going to go that route. I'll get more granular on a OneDrive and do some individual files, and we'll go look at the environment after it's been restored too, so you guys can see that. So here's my confirmation. So the restore process can take a few minutes. It's going to go through and run these operations. They'll queue a little bit. We'll see them in the pending and running jobs queue, and then we'll see them in the audit and the history once it completes. But here's what we're going to run through, and we'll finish that. If we come back here now to Head Nerd, we go to the backup and restore jobs. We can see that there is a Exchange restore in process and a OneDrive backup currently in progress. And it's already kicking through that environment. There's what 201 items to restore, so about 3 megs of mail messages. Not a huge amount of data. Give that just a second, and I am restoring into a unique folder. So let's step into here and go M365. With a different account here, and we'll use our Cove Head Nerd account. Let's go into Outlook. And today is October 26th, so we're going to be looking for that unique October 26th folder. So let's see, here's my inbox, drafts, sent, receives. Here's my restores, restored 26th of October. And then inside of that, I've got my archive, conversation history, deleted items, drafts, my inbox with its 50 items, my junk, and various other folders. So I can come into here, take a look at my inbox, find the item that I accidentally deleted, grab that, move it anywhere else inside of my environment that I like, and then I come back and purge this restored folder or some of my earlier restored folders. Here's one back from May. Here's one back from May the 10th and May the 25th, where I did some restores. The structure, the functionality, let's do a refresh here. Okay, so the backup's still in progress, the restore finished. If you look at the history, we'll be able to see the Exchange restore right here, processed 1 user. If you need to restore mailboxes or items from multiple users, it is going to be a sequential operation. So you pick the user you want to restore, the files and data you want to restore, process that, and then launch another restore operation. You can launch that one even while it's working on the first one being restored, but I can't restore 2 users or 3 users from the same wizard. So each wizard is going to be to restore data for an individual user. Let's look at it from a OneDrive perspective. So same selections, same type of connectivity here. We come into OneDrive. We're going to utilize my global admin. We'll accept the permissions. I'm now connected. If you were to clone your tabs up here, it would cause you to re-authenticate again. Historically, I could have used that to do multiple parallel restores, have multiple screens up and make my selections and start to submit them individually. But we've enhanced the security on that one. So if you clone the tab, we do require you to re-authenticate into M365. So here we've got my user from a OneDrive perspective. So I'll select my user. Next, I can go back and pick a historic date. We can go back to the 10th. You can see here I've got my OneDrive folders. If I expand out my production folder here, this is my production scripting folder. So you can see I've got GitHub links in here and scripts for my GitHub page for automation policies. We'll expand that, and we can see I've got bulk redeploy agent. Inside of there, I've got my legacy and my regular agent. I've got an archive folder with a lot of older AMP and script files inside of that. I can pick individual files here that I want to restore, individual folders that I want to work with, and then I've got the same kind of options here to restore to the auto-generated name location 10/26/2023, to a original location, overriding existing files, or skipping them if they've not changed. And then I can also restore to a new location. You'll pick this location from the current tree. If the container you want to restore into as a root doesn't exist, you do need to go create that inside of OneDrive before you'll be able to restore them into here, okay? So I'm going to go back to an auto-generated location. No, actually, I'm going to go to a new location. Let me do that. New location. I'm going to drop this into my scripting folder. Nope, I'm going to drop it into my Head Nerds general folder. That way we can see the distinction for what I've restored. Next, and restore. Here's my summary, and we'll finish it. Taking a look at this, we've got a backup job in process. Let's look at my history. That OneDrive restore has completed. And if we come out, let's see, mail, OneDrive. Let's see, browse my people, browse my meetings, my files, production 1, scripting 1, attachments. Here's my Head Nerd General. Come into here, and now I've got the production folder, which was modified about a minute ago. Go into that. Here's my GitHub AMP files, and the archive with 4 items in it, 1 item and 17 items here. So these were all just laid down, less than a minute ago. Let's go into the archive, and there are my individual files. The nice thing here is that that was almost instantaneous, and that's not because it was able to transfer the data that fast. It's because we're backing up the data, we're creating digital fingerprints, hashes of those files, and I never transfer the same data across the wire twice. So that means that if the data already existed in that SharePoint environment or that OneDrive or that mail environment somewhere else, it will pull it from the local system if it can, and rehydrate it or rebuild it, reconstitute it from there, versus having to grab it from the wire and pull it down. It's smart enough not to grab a corrupted file or a damaged file. It's looking at the hashes that we create, but it'll pull that information in, rebuild the file that way instead of having to transfer it down across a WAN connection. So in this case, I probably didn't have to transfer more than a few bytes of data across the WAN. Everything else was able to come from the local LAN, because in reality, I didn't delete these source files. They happen to exist someplace inside of SharePoint. All it had to do was create a clone of those items. So we did our demo of Exchange. We did a demo of OneDrive there. Let me get into the demo of the OneDrive benefits and the OneDrive limitations just to keep things consistent here. Very, very similar approach, though. As I said, 7 years retention. OneDrive, we back up 4 sessions per day, so every 6 hours instead of every 4. That is what we attempt, not what we guarantee. Your initial first backup, if you're constrained, if you're in a region where Microsoft is throttling, those could happen less frequently, although we are constantly making development improvements, multiple parallel applications to do the backups, implementing additional True Delta and change block tracking types of technologies in order to track the OneDrive changed files. So lots of work going into reducing the amount of data transfer and the duration of your backups. The 3-target restore, auto-generated, original, or new location, and then of course all data is still kept within the region or country that it was sourced from. Some OneDrive limitations, same security user rights. You need a security officer in order to restore from deleted or unlicensed accounts to and or to delete backup history from an account, like you saw me do. Cove does not currently support backup and restore of OneNote folders. So OneNote folders can exist underneath OneDrive or SharePoint, depending on the way your environment's configured. But those subfolders are there in a way that they're not visible to us. It is something that is on the roadmap that we're looking at, trying to find a time slot for, and some methodologies in order to grab that. There are other vendors out there that can't support these. There are some vendors out there that have figured out a way to support it, probably through building out their own data collection methods. Now, and this is going to go for OneDrive and for SharePoint. Both OneDrive and SharePoint do support versioning of files. You can check your files into SharePoint. You can have multiple versions and version history available to you in OneDrive. When we run the backup session, we are backing up the current or the most recent version of that file. If we're backing up every 6 hours and you've modified that file 6 times in the last 6 hours, it's only the last modified version that we're going to capture. And then you keep running throughout the day, modifying it every hour, but we're backing up every 6, so we're capturing every 6th version at this point. If you were to go in and delete all of your version history and all of your items out of OneDrive, and you went back and did a restore for the most recent session, it's going to restore the most recent OneDrive file there. So backup and recovery, like I said, this is not an archive solution. It's not capturing every single piece of data inside of OneDrive. It's capturing what is currently presented to the world inside of OneDrive. You can't back up from accounts that are not licensed or deleted. You can't restore OneDrive items from a trash folder. However, if the item was backed up before it was moved into the trash, I can restore it from that folder. So go to the folder where it used to be housed, find it there, and you can select it for a recovery, or you can search for it based on file name. I don't currently support backup and restore of items that are protected by information rights management. In some organizations, this is going to be huge. This is one of those questions on your checklist when you're looking to see about bringing the customer on board is, do they use information rights management inside of OneDrive? If they do, I'm not going to be able to back up OneDrive for them. We also don't currently support delegated access. I think I might have mentioned this on the Exchange side as well. I'm going to repeat it through each of the individual data sources. It is something that's hopefully on the radar for us, but I don't have a prioritization or an ETA yet back from product management. Let's get ready to look at the SharePoint and the Teams functionality. We've got about 30 minutes or so left. I also want to cover some of the API functionality as well. SharePoint, retention 7 years, backups running 4 sessions a day, so every 6 hours. SharePoint Online permissions are protected so that when you restore those SharePoint files and folders to their original state, they're in their original state coming right out of the backup session. So if you didn't have permissions or rights to get to it before, once we've restored it to a new location, you still don't have permissions or rights to get to it. There are 2 restore targets with SharePoint, back to the original location or the new location. Everything's still kept in country and region. You can define roles. Role definitions can be restored only in a root site or a site collection. And then metadata for SharePoint files can be backed up and it can be restored. Limitations, very, very similar to what we saw on the OneDrive side. Let's see, we're not going to back up SharePoint lists. We're not going to back up previous versions of files inside of those SharePoint environments, only the current version. This also has an impact on what you have checked in as a version, whether it's a drafted version or a checked in version of a file or of a site. The settings that you have will determine whether you're backing up the checked in version or the currently being edited version. We don't support backup of planners or wikis, although I think wikis have actually been discontinued inside of SharePoint in favor of lists. These guys act as separate data sources. There's not a dedicated API for it. They look like they're a subcomponent of SharePoint, but they're their own separate data sources with their own separate management structures and databases and inventories and permissions. So those have to be protected through alternative methods. Cove also doesn't currently support backup and restore of the OneNote folders that are linked to SharePoint. So OneNote backups, not something possible. If you have the options inside of your OneNote configuration to dump those out to disk, save those, export those out, that's really the only option today for those. So keep that in mind. I can't recreate a deleted site collection. So if a site collection is deleted, I can restore it to a new location, but you got to create that location manually. So you'd have to go in, create the new location, and then you can restore it into that container or that location as part of the recovery. Site collections include the site within a site collection includes the site within SharePoint as well as the necessary structure, so the document libraries and the metadata and so on. But because I can't, how do I want to say this? Because I can't modify the role definitions, I can only restore those back to a root site. So, you know, pulling those back in, getting the environment back, then a little bit of additional manipulation or configuration post-restore. Let's see, information rights management, same limitation here, and the delegated access not supported. All of these restrictions and or benefits, like I said, they are all listed in our documentation. That's the ideal place to check those and monitor those if you want to build yourself a checklist. As you're working through making a determination, is this going to meet my customer's needs or not? The documentation libraries inside of SharePoint, depending on how you set a variable or a setting in your custom document libraries, we will have different behaviors. So if you set the enforce unique values setting to yes, then we're going to back up files we're going to back up the files that are not checked in on SharePoint. So that would be the files that are pending update, that are in current draft mode, but have not been checked in by the user. If you use the enforce unique values set to no, then we're going to back up the files that have been checked in on SharePoint and be able to recognize the changes that have been made to those files. So depending on how this setting is made, it will have an impact on how we back up and or protect those document libraries. Let me hit the demo for SharePoint. I'll do the demo for Teams really quick as well. Then I'll talk about the Teams preview and what you guys can expect coming up in the Teams GA, and then what the roadmap in the future looks like for Microsoft Teams as well. So back into our Cove dashboard. If I come into SharePoint here, what we're going to see is my list of sites. I've got 14 active sites, a deleted site, a total of 15 sites that have been protected. There are no unprotected sites. We can see sizes for these. Some of these sites are just collections of folders and structures. They have not had actual files or other objects added into them. Once again, lab environment generated by the automated dev functions inside of Azure. And my Visual Studio subscription. So it works nice from a lab perspective, gives me enough to work with without having to come in and create a lot of manual content that I'm changing in order to show data's not stale. So 15 protected sites, 3 protected users. My billing for SharePoint here is really only tied to 3 users. Those 3 users are already being backed up as part of my mail, so therefore no additional charges being incurred for SharePoint. Selected size 4.2 megabytes, and we see that breakdown here based on those individual sites. So not a ton of data to play with. Add new sites to backup with this turned on. As new sites are created, they'll get backed up. You can see I deleted this Mark 8 project team. It's in my deleted section. I've restored it, so it's back into the environment again. So I've got my deleted history, and then I've got my ongoing future history here. And that's because of the way this was restored. It created basically effectively a new instance of that. Let's see. Now that I've got this one restored, I can turn around and come over and hit my little delete option and purge the history of that one if I wanted to. But since we're not billing based on the number of protected sites, it doesn't really have any bearing. I can keep these in here as long as I want and revert back to them or refer back to them anytime I need them. I'll restore them as a different name, into a different location, pull the items I want out of them, and put them into another site. So you can get pretty creative with this. From a restore perspective, let's go ahead and do a quick restore of SharePoint. We're going to do a authentication. Same process. Cove head nerd admin. Here are my permissions. I am now connected. Now, for any of you guys out there that are using or have been using M365 for a while, you might have had some pop-ups recently asking you to re-authenticate each of your domains that you're protecting. We did that to enable multiple application support or multiple application processing. They're using either MAS or MAP as the acronym for it. Effectively, we've got multiple versions of the Cove platform now that are running behind the scenes in order to do parallel operations to do backup of your M365 Mail, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams environments. And it just requires that additional authentication so that it can authorize those parallel applications in order to do the processing. Same backup procedures, same restore procedures. After you've enabled that, you really won't notice any difference behind the scenes. Okay. So what do I want to restore here? So I've got some sites here that I can work with. The sales and marketing site, for example, or this new SharePoint team site. We'll go sales and marketing. Let's go in and try to restore that. Let's say next. What date do I want to restore this from? Let's go ahead and grab it back from earlier in the week. So let's say the 23rd. Do I want to restore the entire thing or just a subset? So I can come down here and expand this out a little bit. See that I've got some files in here under general and some images. Let's look at this project team here, see if there's anything inside of it. So not necessarily a ton of content in here, but there is some. I want to recreate the entire infrastructure minus maybe the monthly reports of the two project teams. And I can skip files that not changed, laying it back down to the original location, or choose to restore the original permissions, or I could go to a new location, and we're going to put this new location. This was sales and marketing, and I'm going to put it into under this sales and marketing location here. Next. Once again, if you don't have a container that you want to drop it into, you don't know what those are or what permissions or who owns those, go in and create those base sites or those base folders or those base mailbox folders, OneDrive folders first, and then you'll be able to see those in your dropdown for the restore. That's now queued. We can hit the link here and view the job queue, or I can hit finish and then go into it. But we'll start to see that data laid back down now as well. Cove Data Protection, history. Let's look at restores only, and we can see my restores from today. Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams. Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint. Still got a Teams we need to work on. 12 minutes, 13 minutes on this OneDrive restore earlier today. It was only 10 seconds for the one I did for you guys. 5 seconds, 30 seconds, 20 seconds. So fairly quick restores here. Pulling data back. Yes, if you were to pull back a terabyte of data with millions of files, it's been running for a long time, you're not going to see 20-second restores. You're going to talk 2, 4, 24, 48 hours, maybe in some situations, especially if Microsoft's doing throttling and some of those kind of things. So, that could be lengthy. I might suggest that you take some of your larger environments, do a sample restore into a unique folder, pull back a lot of data, measure the size of that, and then come back and look and see what those sample durations were, just so you have an expectation of what it might look like if you had to pull it all back for your customer, in a critical situation. Once you're done, you can just come in and purge and delete that without any difficulty. Okay. Let's see. That was SharePoint. Let's hit Teams. Teams is going to operate very similar to SharePoint. So we can see active and deleted teams. We can see protected and unprotected teams. These are my teams. Conversation teams. Oh heck, I'm drawing a blank on my naming structures here. These are my teams channels. There we go. Teams channels that we're backing up. So we can see I've got Teams channels here that match up very closely with my SharePoint infrastructure. Not a one-to-one, but very closely. And then we can see the number of users that have access to these teams, as well as the number of owners that own the individual team. Now, it's these owners that we are using for licensing purposes. This is something that we're thinking about, something very similar for the SharePoint site. So the site creators, site owners, things like that, those would be the individuals responsible, or the ones that we would utilize and tag from a billing level when we start to look for unique mailboxes. If I did want to purge one of these out, I no longer need to keep it or back it up. I can still remove it here. As new teams are added, do I automatically include them for backup, or do I have to come in and manually add them on a regular recurring basis in order to get them protected? So those same exact options, sort and filter, those are all here. What we're backing up right now from a Teams perspective are just Teams channels, not Teams chats, not Teams files, although most of those Teams files actually are existing inside of your OneDrive or your SharePoint. So we probably are capturing them through another methodology. But not chats, not individual files shared in chats, something that is slated for future development. So let's come in here and hit my restore operations around Teams. So before you do that, note that the preview ends in November. It's going to become generally available in billing around the beginning of December. And then, of course, any history that was done here during the preview gets purged away. They've already started moving the databases around and changing. This link will change once we get to GA, so you'll be able to see that and have that notification inside of the console. If you are concerned about extra billing or any type of billing pieces around your Teams preview, you can come in here and deselect your Teams infrastructure. You may want to go through and even remove the historical Teams infrastructure on it, and then maybe start a new trial or configure that environment again to start out and evaluate Teams once you're in a GA state. If you don't do that, it'll just flip into a production state and continue to move forward with you. If you see any major problems or concerns between flipping from the preview into the GA state, if your billing gets wonky for some reason, please reach out to our customer success team, to our finance teams, and we can do a quick review of that one and make sure things are proper and or work on helping you guys get it corrected. Okay. The restore for Teams. Let's unsave changes. I'll discard those. Connect. Same user. I know this is redundant. We did at one point offer a keep my permissions for 24 hours window, but we did decide to deprecate that functionality just for security purposes. We want to require this authentication, per restore attempt. And it's going to ensure that from an audit perspective, the user doing the restores is the one that entered the credentials, not somebody that happened to hop onto the machine and the browser was still authenticated. Okay. So here, what's the team site that we want to restore? If I had 10 team sites 10 Teams channels to restore, I would have to come in here and restore each of those channels individually. I cannot do a multi-select here from a channels perspective. That's based on the targeting of where we want to restore. Possibly it could be done through API calls if we had a large bulk environment to do it. If you get yourself into a situation like that, you need assistance, feel free to reach out to us. We can see what we can do to help. So the sales and marketing, I'll do this one down here, this sales underscore marketing. Next. Sessions over the last couple days. We'll go grab sessions for the 25th. I want to restore the entire sales and marketing channel here so we can see my general and my monthly reporting sub-channels, I guess those are the right terms for it. Now, this is going to restore this and create it as a new team. So it's not going to do an in-place restore over top of this one, but it's going to build a new one. So I'm going to enter the new team name, and we'll call this one Sales Plus Marketing. Oh, nope, it does not like my plus. Let's try Sales Dash Marketing. There we go. Anytime we do get a character limitation, we should show it to you here in the UI. And just work around that one. Spaces, underscores, hyphens, punctuation can be a little challenging inside of M365. So we're going to restore this into the sales dash marketing container like this, and we'll hit restore. And let's view that backup and restore job. One of those queued right now, scanning. Just kicked off, so let's tab away and come back. Tab away and come back. I don't have a refresh button here. You could obviously refresh the entire UI. I like just tabbing away and coming back. It seems to be a faster refresh for me. Restore and process 6 items, process 6, sent 1.1 megabytes. That's great. Let's go to my environment here. Let's see, people, groups. It's in Outlook. Let's get into Teams. Look at the outcome of that restore attempt. So I'm just going to use the Windows app here, or the browser version, which should be sufficient. Digital, retail, US, general, M8, M2, retail, sales, dash marketing, sales underscore hyphen marketing. So we can see each of those. And then inside of here, I've got my general, and I've got my monthly reports, my hidden channel. Let's go ahead and show that. And then let's see, what do I have here? I've got my content or my AMP file here inside of the environment. That was restored as well. So dropping it back in the way, or at least pretty close to the way it was originally. There are some limitations on Teams, so I want to talk through that now in probably the next 5 to 7 minutes, and then we'll drop to some APIs and some scripting components. Just checking the questions here. I've been trying to pepper the queries in as we go along, so I think I'm doing pretty good. But if I did miss something, please comment on it and bump it back to the top, okay? So what is the Teams preview? Well, up to this point, we're only backing up Teams channels. And we weren't backing up attachments, we weren't backing up images or content inside of those teams, just the actual Teams channel messages. That changes with this upcoming release. We've already started rolling out those functions, so you'll see advantages there very, very shortly. Retention 7 years, 6 sessions a day. Back up the channel messages of Teams and restore those from a specific date and session, and it allows you to restore to a new location. So I'm not overriding the old team. I'm creating a new team and dropping the data back into it. So if you deleted the old team and you're going to create a new one, that's great. The team itself, you aren't really damaging pieces or components inside of it. So it's really just a matter about laying back down that team from a prior point in time if it were damaged, deleted, or archived. The backup history has already been purged for those of you in the Teams preview. They've already rolled out the new databases and started capturing it to a new database structure. That's why I've only got 3 or 4 days of Teams backup history that I was able to restore from. Limitations. In the preview, it's not possible to configure settings for the general channel. And as such, we're only restoring with Microsoft's default settings because you can't change the general options here. Now, once you've restored it, you can come back in and modify it and adjust it inside of Teams. Private channels get restored as public channels, but they can be later converted back to private after the restore. A deleted channel doesn't get backed up, but we would have hopefully protected it before it was deleted, and then we can restore those back as active channels. If you had guest users inside of a channel, those do not get restored. You'd have to come in and add them after the restore process, but all of the named users that were members of the channel, those would still be there post-restore. Group settings cannot be restored. It's part of the default group setting, that's what we're going to apply back during the restore process. Some of these items are going to change a little bit with global availability. With GA, others are still going to be development works in progress. They have not yet updated the documentation on the Enable support site, but once you see the announce for GA in the console, you'll be able to see the updated versions of limitations there. What does global availability look like? Well, when we hit global availability, and that will be in November, this is our second phase of Teams data source development. So we're going to be backing up and restoring hosted content. That's not just the messages inside of the channels, but the actual hosted content. We're also going to be backing up and restoring the Files tab. Yes, the Files tab could have some overlap with the Files tab from OneDrive or from SharePoint, but we're getting them in the context of the individual channels themselves. Various improvements on backup speed and consistency that we've been applying to the other data sources. You'll see that advantages coming into the Teams side of the house as well. Various bug fixes, UI updates, and refreshes. And then the plan is to enable billing in the December timeframe. So there'll be a period there, even from a November perspective, where we're not billing on this one for partners to be able to evaluate and play with it. So that's the second phase. Now you might ask me, what is hosted content? Hosted content is the term we're using for any data embedded in the message body of the Teams channel. For example, the picture of the llama, the file attachment, a hyperlink that's going to take me to a SharePoint site, a web link, emojis, those kind of things. Usually it's a GIF or a copy and pasted image. It should be fairly small. However, even though those are fairly small, they do make up about 85% of the backup size inside of a given message. So text is cheap, text is small, images, even if they are small, are still much larger, and they only dedupe and or compress so much, right? Let's see. There was something else I was going to cover here, and I've lost it. What we're not getting here as part of this global availability is I'm still not getting backup of individual private chats. And this is one of the things I use in Teams a lot, is I don't go to a channel with members and comment there. I normally go to the private groups that I have with 3 or 4 unique people that I will add or grow or expand. And maybe I'm using Teams incorrectly, but I like the individual chats and the individual messages better than building a team and assigning owners for it and then working inside of those teams. For that reason, I am not going to get backups of my private individual chats or my private files or any of those other components inside of there just yet. Microsoft actually doesn't have an API to allow me to restore back into those. And because there are private chats, where would I restore it? Who would I assign it to? How would I relate it? If the chat were deleted, I guess I could restore the chat back, but am I restoring it back for you or for me? Whose chat is it? Those kind of questions come up. So those are the things we have to answer. We also have to build out a restore mechanism to allow for on-premise restore. So the expectation is we wouldn't put that back into M365 directly. We would restore that out as a audit, if you will. This is that private chat that was protected, and then now we've got it so you can restore it and pull it out into a message, much like you would export out an email into a .msg file or multiple mails into a PST file. That opens up one of the other questions that was asked a little bit earlier, and I'd responded privately. But the question was: is there an ability to restore back to the to a non-M365 environment? Could I download the messages? Could I download the files? Could I create a zip file or restore to a file share? Things like that. No, not currently. Right now, all the restores go back into M365. Although there has been a lot of discussion between partners and product management and engineering around, okay, how do we do that? How do we ensure security while we're doing that, and not just open up, all the private chats to, any administrator that wants to do the restores. Where we were doing some exports out of the console and pulling things into email views and things of that nature. And I'd moved that to the earlier part of the session because I didn't want to rush that for you. But when it comes to scripting and automation, I do have a GitHub repository. The link is available in the handout document. And I'm the only one that contributes to or posts into that repository. It is github.com/backupnerd. Inside of that, I have a backup scripts repository broken out into categories for continuity, deployment, migration, monitoring, reporting, retention, bulk settings, troubleshooting. We're going to go to the reporting section and specifically grab this M365 subfolder. And I've got a script here called Get M365 Device Statistics, version 31. As I said, these scripts are all written by me. If I do repurpose any additional content or modules from external sources, I normally use the code to download them from the PowerShell library, and I'll put references and notes within the script body, pointing those out. Documentation, behavior, what the script is expected to do, default parameters that are set that you can adjust and or change, This particular script is designed to pull M365 device statistics out of the management console in an automated manner. So let me grab my VS Code environment. Let's open up that same script, open file, M365 device statistics version 31. I'm actually on version 33 right now because I've built out some additional functionality for SharePoint and some functionality for Teams. So I'll be publishing a newer version here pretty soon, but we'll work on the same version that's currently available for download. I can run this script, and what it's going to do is pull data for all of my end customers, pull data for all of my protected domains, let me select the ones individually that I want to report on, or grab them all, whichever way you choose, and create a CSV and an Excel file that can be used for user management, reconciliation, reporting, those kind of things, okay? So I just ran the script as a local administrator. This is my pop-up for it. All of the parameters and command line functions are listed here. These are the current parameters that are set. So we can see that I'm not telling it to do all partners or all devices. It's going to prompt me for those. I'm telling it to get up to 5,000 domains when I'm pulling data back. Do I put it into a grid view or export the history? Not currently, but this would export out histories. I mentioned I had a script for getting the history out. Do I want to get my export as a combined report, meaning all of my users and devices inside of their own inside of consolidated spreadsheets? Or do I want to get it as individual spreadsheets, one per end customer, in case I wanted to hand those reports to various customers, not have to manipulate the spreadsheet and break it up? You can do both. Do I want to automatically launch the report when it's done? Where am I going to store the report? It's going to show up in a named dated folder. What's my comma delimiter or my CSV delimiter? If you're doing this in the Netherlands or in the UK, the comma delimited isn't necessarily used. Sometimes it's a semicolon delimited. So you can control that from an output perspective. It wants to know your user credentials, so to log into Cove in order for this to run. Now, it already knows who I am. It's got my partner and my username. It's already used my stored encrypted key, encryption key. When you run this, if you do, you're going to enter your partner name, and it might be something like, Acme, comma, IT, and then it might have an email address, bob@acme.net in parentheses. Whatever the partner name shows up as or the customer name shows up as in the top of your Cove dashboard, that is what's going to be entered here, along with your email address and your password. Make sure you've turned on API level authentication or API access in your user permissions, and then you'll be able to run this. So I'm going to run it for my SE demo environment. That's the environment that we've been working with that includes that demo environment I was showing you. And since I didn't say specify all partners, it enumerates partners for me. So I can see my top level SE demo, all my end customers, all my sites. Whichever one I pick, it's going to enumerate domains inside of that container or that tenant. And it is going to fill or populate downstream. So I'm going to start at the top level, the parent level, and choose OK to get all of my domains enumerated for all my sub-customers. It's now going to go and grab and enumerate those. I'm going to get a pop-up on my second window here, so I can see I've got 5 different M365 domains. This one just recently added in. We can see the errors, the billable, the OneDrives, the SharePoints. I have not yet updated this for Teams functionality yet. That is on my short-term plan. And I can come in here and pick, a couple, say a couple, 3 of these. Yeah, let's go with those 3. And hit OK. And it is going to, I thought I only picked 3, but maybe I did pick, maybe I was using the shift instead of control. It's going to go through and enumerate that information. So what am I seeing on my screen here right now? I'm seeing the partner, I'm seeing the account, the domain, my color bar over the last 28 days, pluses and minuses, X's. Here are my named users for these domains. So we can see these are billable users, protected. Is it a regular mailbox? Is it deleted? Is it shared? Is it a new mailbox? Is it currently selected for backup, included or excluded? All of this data can be used to adjust selections, to reconcile events. let's see, for example, here is my report of all of my users across those domains. Here's my SE demo. Here's my North American technologies. Here's my Asia Pacific tech. And then these are the individual domains inside of them. Billable users. Here's a billable deleted. Might be worth looking at. Let's see how long ago it was deleted. It was deleted back in 426, or that was the last time it was backed up. So since it was more than 6 months, maybe I want to purge that. Down here, I've got a deleted billable that 426. Down here, I've got a deleted billable 46 2020. Oh my! So this one's been around for a long time. I've been paying this now for a couple of years as a deleted mailbox at $1 or $1.50 a month. If I no longer need it, yeah, let's get rid of it. If I do need the data, well, let's not pay for it. Let's just turn around and restore this user's deleted mail and even deleted OneDrive potentially into another user's mailbox that needs to have this information and retain this information. Maybe it's managed mailbox, that kind of thing. So this can really help out with reconciliation, because you can look at now at thousands of mailboxes instead of having to look at them 50 or 100 at a time inside of each individual domain. Now I can't purge or clean them here from this particular output, but I could take this one and change things like selected to excluded in this report, and turn around and feed this back into my script in order to deselect or make selections. So my plan is to build some additional further cleanup scripts and some further automations that can purge deleted mailboxes that have been deleted for more than X number of months, to delete SharePoint from shared mailboxes that are still billable because of legacy OneDrive mailboxes, things like that, to report on cases where the license configuration is still assigned, but the mailbox is deleted or it's not configured properly, to try to help you manage these guys on a regular basis. Ultimately, I would expect for some of this to get moved into product, since these are valid customer and feature requests. It's the fact that the API allows it today that I'm building it out. So please don't hesitate to reach out or follow my GitHub page, follow my Twitter and or other social media handles. I'll be posting on there as I get some of these newer scripts updated. So with that, guys, I think that is just about everything that I have for you. I really do appreciate those of you that could hang around for a few extra minutes to go through that. I mentioned purging accounts. This was popped up here. This is a prototype I've been working on. So here of North American Tech and Asia Pacific Tech, here are my billable, deleted, and deleted shared mailboxes. So deleted mailboxes with retention greater than 180 days, and select the accounts to purge. So I could pick a couple different devices in here, hit OK, and it would purge those out of my infrastructure so that they are no longer billable. I guess technically this last one is not billable, but from a compliance perspective, you still might want to remove that one because it's now data that's several years old, and it could break compliance or cause your customers legal concerns even if that data were to be restored and to get out. Okay, so that is everything that I have today. I want to thank everybody for your time and your attention. I really do appreciate you staying long on this. I will do my best to get this all wrapped into a concise 2-hour package, or I'll end up moving the bootcamp to be a 2-hour and 30-minute one. But I think it'll be a little bit easier once we get Teams into a GA state. Okay, take care, guys. Have a great day. See you in a future bootcamp and or office hours. Bye.